If you think about Castle Hedingham, then there's a very good chance that you're thinking of Hedingham Castle. And if that's the case, then there's a good chance that the way that you view it is very much the Norman keep and grounds that you're looking at here in this clip at the moment, as they are today. However, the castle itself extended well out into what's now the modern village in the medieval period. And not only that, the estates, clearly the lands that were held by the De Vere family, were very significant and covered most of the local countryside. That's now all been lost, and the area surrounding the keep, as you can see from this in the distance, is now all arable land. It's rural North Essex. It's all been used for crops. And the evidence of what was there before has sometimes been lost. It is known, though, that parks existed in the proximity of the castle. Specifically, what I'm going to look at today is this particular piece of land, which is just to the east of the village and the castle. And I want you to imagine this, as we're looking at it now, to be largely covered by a fairly significant pond, or I suppose you could almost call it a lake, really, in part of an ornamental park that would have been basically a pleasure park. It would have, we think, probably been landscaped sometime in the late 15th or possibly the early 16th century, probably by John de Vere, the 13th Earl of Oxford. There are various theories, but it dates from around about that period, it's thought, and it would fit because John de Vere was a significant ally of Henry VII at Bosworth, and he was a man of great power, and he also had been imprisoned for a very significant period during the Wars of the Roses, got the Hedingham estate back, and proceeded to restore it. So that would entirely fit with this. The farmhouse that you're looking at now is Little Lodge, and this particular park was known as Little Park. The research that I'm using as the basis for much of what I'm saying here today was carried out about 15 years ago by Robert Liddiard and Fiona Wells, and I've put a link in to their study, and it's very, very well worth a read. They know an awful lot more about this than I do. But basically what they say is that this land, and we're just heading back the other way now, consisted of terraces to either side of what's now a stream. You can just see the narrow stream running down there. It's spring fed, and if you rewind the video a little bit, you'll see the source of those springs. They just sort of meet and form this slightly more significant stream that runs down the hillside. And they think it was dammed at around about this sort of point that we're at now, and that formed a pond or lake, possibly two, but it's thought probably that the barrier between that's been detected later was inserted later. The reservoir that you can see there now is totally unconnected with that, other than that it obviously collects the same water. It was built in the 1960s, so it's obviously completely modern, as you can probably see. The crop markings that you can see here, I say crop markings, the markings in the soil that you can see here, we were looking at while we were making this video. I'll tell you who we were in just a second, with the thought that they might represent something. I think they're actually lime or something similar in the soil, so I don't think there's anything at all here. This is just further to the east of that piece of land, with Foxhall Grove, the small piece of woodland just to the left of the picture there. Foxhall Grove takes its name almost certainly from Vauxhall, which was a name that was used sort of generically much later on for a pleasure garden, so it kind of fits with the general theories that we're looking at here. You can see the farm again there, so that will give you some idea of orientation. And just to your left now, you can see the start of those springs as they feed down the hillside. So this is looking now back towards the reservoir, sort of from Little Lodge Farm, and it gives you a bit of an idea of the drop in the hill there, and you can picture that as being lake. And this is then coming from the other way, of course, at lower level, and this gives a bit of an idea of the terrace. I have to say, the study that I've referred to talks very confidently about different sections of terrace. All I can say is that the people who've done that are much more knowledgeable, much more observant than I am. I find it very hard to pick them out, but you can sort of see the drop off to the right here where the pond or lake would have been, and you can get an impression of the fact that there is a kind of a terrace to the left. I have to say, if it was me, I would be struggling to say that this was anything other than natural, but the people who've done it are clearly much more educated and informed on these matters than I am, so I'll certainly take their word for it on this. And as we're coming up here now, then we're coming to a sort of a viewing platform, which would have been the point where the landscape would have opened out in front of the people who would have been enjoying the gardens in the late 15th or early 16th centuries. We've moved on a bit now. We're still in the little park, because the little park was quite large, and you'll see from the map here the sort of extent that it covered. This is a 16th century map, and it stuns me how accurate it is in terms of the road layout. There is one exception to that I'll come to in just a moment. This little copse is really interesting, because obviously this is one of the bits that's been ploughed out and it's completely arable. But what you can see in this little copse is that it's water. I had no idea that it was water until the day that we filmed this, and I was doing it with Rob Worley and Charlie Bird. Charlie is a local historian of some note, and Rob has also taken a lot of interest in local history and the landscape over a long period. And Rob was saying, of course, it'll have water in it, and I didn't realise that it had. But of course it has, and that's the reason that it still exists, obviously. Anyway, we're still in the park here, and the park would have been covered by light woodland. I presume it had deer and game for hunting and so on. So that little copse sort of fits into that landscape, I suppose. This is Hosden's Lane here, which is one of the boundaries of the old little park. And you can see just how much it is arable. The crossroads we're coming up to here, this is Hosden's Lane on the right, and the road towards Great Maplestead running straight across the picture in front of us, Delvin's Lane up in front. This crossroads is significant for a much later story, so this is well after the time of the De Veres. It's the villager's rather sad witch story about Pole Miles, and Pole was basically hounded by the villagers, I think it's fair to say, and was sort of ostracised. And eventually she died in mysterious circumstances in the canal, which is actually a lake, at the castle. This is one that still exists. And she was buried away from sanctified ground, as was obviously the tradition, on this crossroads. So top of the picture here, the sort of top left quarter is roughly where Paul's grave is reputed to be. And locals quite often place flowers on that grave at Halloween. And there it is again from lower level. And we're heading out of the little park now. So this is the boundary of the little park. So that crossroads forms the boundary. And we're then heading away in the direction of Sudbury and parallel to the Sudbury Road here on what's now a green lane. But we are out of the park here at this point. And this is heading back again towards it, with Little Lodge right in the top right hand corner there, and the village just a bit further across, with the castle obviously. But you can see the crossroads right in front of us there, and you can see the nature of the landscape as it is now and how much it's changed. But it is reassuring that you have still got these little patches of trees. And they're perhaps a bit of a reminder of what that parkland was like in the Tudor period. And the area in front has actually recently been replanted with saplings, so there's some encouragement there as well. I'm sweeping low over this piece of land here because Charlie believes that there might possibly have been religious buildings, possibly a chapel on this particular patch. There's no sign of any crop markings at this point, certainly, but then at this time of year, this was filmed obviously in the winter when the ground is very damp, obviously isn't optimal for that. So I'll probably go back and have another look at some other point. But it would be interesting to see anyway, but it may be that all trace has been lost of those. Going back to the Amis map, which is the 16th century map, it was actually created for Lord Burleigh, at the point when he purchased the lands from the 17th Earl of Oxford. There's plenty about the 17th Earl of Oxford online, I can assure you, if you have a look, and you'll find out the reasons for that if you don't already know them. Amos was a genius, really, I think it's fair to say, as far as cartography is concerned, and his maps are superb. But I did allude to the one small discrepancy, and I've just put the modern map of the area, the modern OpenStreetMap, alongside his map, and you can see the alignment of Little Lodge and the lake that we've been looking at, or the likely lake that we've been looking at, would appear to be wrong. The line that Amos draws it on is actually aiming towards a higher piece of land, which obviously just wouldn't fit with the pond at all. There's no way that it was there, and the evidence that we've got of the spring suggests exactly where it was, and you can see that on the modern map. So I think it's just plain wrong. I suppose I'm looking at it with a 21st century eye on mapping, but it does seem very odd, because you can also see that the line of the roads is absolutely perfect, which I find astonishing given the technology that he had to help him compared to the technology we've got to help us draw OpenStreetMap. And yet he gets the line of the stream and the lake incorrect, it appears. But anyway, I'll leave that one to you, and I'd invite any comments. I hope you found this useful. As I say, I've put other links to the resources that I've used, including the Essex Record Office, for example, and the original study into the little park, into the description of this video.